There were certainly thousands of monks in the early medieval church who both contributed to and preserved the canon of Catholic plain chant melodies, but very few of these individuals are known to us today. Plain chant was an oral tradition that was passed on from one person to the next, and therefore there was little ownership over the process. The purpose was not to express one's individuality through the performance of music, rather the point was to participate actively in the traditions and dogma of the church. What we know of chant melodies today was written down in the 10th century or later, so represents what chants might have sounded like at that time. Certainly over the course of the hundreds of years that plain chants were sung, these melodies were added to, edited, and changed many, many times. For this reason, most medieval chants are recorded as having been written anonymously. We might also interpret this to mean that they were written through the efforts of a community of monks whose contributions probably spanned many years, or even more likely many centuries. One composer of the medieval period seems to break out of this mold. In fact, she is one of very few composers about whom significant biographical information is known, and this is a testament to her impact on both music and the church during her lifetime. Hildegard von Bingen behaved as an individual, broke tradition, and asserted her own ideas and opinions in both her writings and her music. She is also unique because she is female. At a time when women were not allowed to sing in church and rarely undertook musical activities or writing, she rose to prominence as a composer, author, healer, mystic, and visionary theologian. Hildegard was born around the year 1098 to a family of the lower nobility. She was the youngest of 10 children, and as was the custom with that number of offspring, she was given to the church at a young age. She spent her teenage years enclosed in a convent with a nun named Jutta, who was an anchor of the church, meaning she had voluntarily taken vows of poverty and solitude. She lived in an enclosed room adjacent to a monastery. Except for her pupils, such as young Hildegard, no one visited Jutta or entered her chambers. It was certainly a severe upbringing for Hildegard, but Jutta was by all accounts kind and nurturing and eventually became an important confidant for Hildegard. Hildegard's seclusion with Jutta afforded her ample opportunity to hear the music of the monastery next door, an experience which likely colored her later musical endeavors. Jutta also taught her how to read and write, although Hildegard later asserted that Jutta was not learned enough to teach her how to interpret the Bible. That was a skill which she believed had been given to her by God. Hildegard rose to prominence within the church, and at the age of 38 she was elected prioress of the convent that had taken up residence in and around Jutta's former anchorage. Having outgrown the cramped monastery, Hildegard petitioned to move her group and build a new convent in the German town of Bingen. She also desired to gain independence from the church. Her request was rejected by local officials, so Hildegard went directly to the archbishop, who eventually granted her permission. She oversaw the building of the new convent, which contained innovative conveniences uncommon in the time, such as pipes which brought water into the structure. This was the point of Hildegard's awakening. Since a young age she had experienced visions, but she had shared them with only Jutta and a trusted friend, a monk named Volmar, who would later become her secretary. She described these experiences as blackouts, during which she would hear beautiful music, see detailed symbolic images, and hear the voice of God. A few years after moving to Bingen, she experienced the most profound vision of her life. She described it this way: "And it came to pass, when I was 42 years and 7 months old, that the heavens were opened, and a blinding light of exceptional brilliance flowed through my entire brain, and it so kindled my whole heart and breast like a flame, not burning, but warming, and suddenly I understood all of the meaning of all of the expositions of the books." It was with this vision that Hildegard asserted she had been gifted with an instant understanding of all of the biblical texts. With trepidation, she vowed to write all that she had experienced, feeling she was under the charge of God to do so. She eventually gained the support of the church. Pope Eugene III officially recognized the validity of her visions, and she quickly rose to fame across the European continent. The 12th century was a rocky time, with many groups such as the Cathars speaking out against both real and perceived infractions committed on the part of the Catholic Church. Anyone preaching new ideas quickly found a following, and Hildegard was no exception. She traveled throughout Germany and probably as far as France, preaching a doctrine which focused on the divine nature of humanity and the natural world. The mandala, or spiritual symbol, that you're viewing right now is one of many that she and the nuns in her convent created to depict her view of the universe and mankind. Hildegard believed that man was God's greatest creation and was in fact directly mirrored in the structure and content of the universe, which she referred to as the cosmic egg. This type of imagery, which clearly points to a feminine view of creation, was common to her writings. She also viewed the Church as the mother of Christianity on earth. Over the course of 10 years, Hildegard wrote 3 books detailing her visions and their theological implications. During this time, she also became counselor to kings, bishops, abbots, and men of all social standing. At a time when it was still relatively uncommon to compose music and claim it as one's own, Hildegard wrote around 72 chants and a musical morality play called Ordo Virtutum, all of which are written to original texts she claimed she received in her visions. She viewed music as an extremely important aspect of worship, as she believed it was a way of recapturing the original beauty of paradise. Certainly this is a more personal and intimate view of music than what was common to the aesthetics of the time. She asserted that God had originally given Adam a voice of great purity and beauty so that, together with the angels, he could sing praise to God. After the fall, God gave the world music so that part of this beauty could be recaptured. We can also find in Hildegard's work signs that she saw other powers inherent to music. She specifically manipulated musical elements in order to bring emphasis to certain words in the text, an effect which clearly shows that she felt music could heighten emotion and/or direct the listener's attention. For example, in O Sexores, the chant which is included in your text, Hildegard builds tension with successive leaps, which are wide gaps between notes, on the words et, vos, qui, and semper. This culminates in the high point of the piece, during which a climactic tone emphasizes the word officio, or service, as in the service of the Lamb, which is a symbol for Christ. Listen to this moment in the music now. Using the elements of composition in this way suggests that Hildegard meant to infuse her music with more than just a symbolic meaning. It seems that she saw music as possessing the ability to direct the listener towards certain experiences, ideas, or emotions. This brings a level of creativity and individuality to her music that was not common for the time, and she may have been one of the first musicians to view music in this way.